Hi everybody and welcome back to another edition of Q and Egg. This is our special How to Build a PC series of Q and Egg. See, what happened is Paul and Kyle started this project last week and didn't quite get it all the way finished, and we couldn't set up for regular Q and Egg, so I thought, you know, why interrupt them? We can just ask them questions while they're shooting the video. Okay, so our first question comes from Loud and Proud. That's a crucial 2.5-inch drive. Very good, Paul.
Thank you.
Can you guys do a Pentium G3258 build? I have read and seen a few videos, and this unlocked Pentium put up some good numbers against a Core i5 and i7 when overclocked. I was also wondering if you could do an overclocked guide on this CPU, as I have not seen a video yet of that, just the CPU pushing 4.7 to 4.8 gigahertz in a closed loop cooler.
So several questions in there. Question one would be, answer would be yes. We do have a build planned for the G3258. It's a very capable budget chip. Question two, as far as overclocking goes, I actually had a chip that Intel sent us and I was overclocking it, but the chip I got, and I think it's just the chip because overclocking can vary a lot from processor to processor, wasn't overclocking very well. In fact, I was only able to get it up to about 3.9 stable. I haven't had a chance to revisit that and see if I can do any more tweaking or something, but I really wanted to show some better performance than that, so that's why we haven't really done an overclocking video on that. I think when we get to the point where we do the build, some overclocking as well would also be helpful for that, and definitely very overclockable chip, and if you can get one up higher frequencies, it's a great performer. The only limitation is that it's dual core, not quad core, and so certain games that do take advantage of quad core, like Battlefield 4, it's not going to be quite as good of a performer.
Yeah, even with overclocking does not make up for lack of cores.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, I think that's a good distinction to make because we've been getting a lot of questions about that CPU lately, and I think people may feel that overclocking, you know, may be a good way to compensate for lack of cores because you just push more power through the cores that it has, but it really isn't.
Yeah, and to some degree it does, but ultimately you're going to hit a wall with it eventually, and there are other viable options that are a little bit more expensive that are quad core or something like that.
Okay, so this next one comes from Damon. He says, I've heard motherboard manufacturers have unlocked some non-Z series boards. What issues or limits are there for overclocking the new Intel 20th Anniversary Pentium on a B85, H87, or H97 series motherboard?
Well, that's a good question. So this isn't something that I could immediately say, yes, these boards are unlocked and will allow you to overclock. I've heard the same thing. There are some boards that can do that. The main thing you're going to want to look at, especially if you're looking at older series, 8 series boards, is that the manufacturer has updated the board's BIOS to work with the new chip. Okay. Because the Anniversary Edition came out after those Z87, H87, and B85 boards came out, so updating the BIOS code to actually recognize the chip is going to be #1 priority, and not every motherboard manufacturer has done that. Beyond that, it's just going to be case by case, so that's a good question for the forums and some YouTube or some Google research. Yeah. Because I know it is. I've read a little bit about it, but not to the point where I could say yes, this exact board.
Yeah, here's the configuration you need to go do.
Yeah.
So a little more research on that one. This next one comes from Harhus M. He says, Hello Newegg. I've been watching your show for some time and I do very much enjoy it. I have been planning to build my first system for a while, though I have come across 2 major concerns. First is if all the wires I would need would come with the products, or do I have to buy them separately? Also, I would like to know if it's okay to have a power supply that delivers more energy than the computer requires. Thanks and keep up the great work.
Answers there would be, Kyle hasn't answered any yet. Kyle, do you want to answer this one?
All I caught was the last question, and that is no. You should always have a power supply that is more than capable of handling the output.
Well, he was asking, is it okay? So like, let's say you get all your build together and like a power supply configurator tool like we have on Newegg is saying you need 450 watts for this. Is it okay to buy an 800 watt power supply?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes. In fact, that's often a good thing to do because having your power supply running at about 50% load is a good kind of midpoint, and it might be better if the efficiency rating there might be better than if you had a 500 watt build and you only have a 500 watt power supply. It's running closer to maximum capacity, and it might not be as efficient. It might run hotter. The fan might need to spin up a little bit more. So
you better have 80 plus platinum at that point if you're pushing the limits there.
Yeah. So overkill on the power supply, not a bad thing, and often recommended. So it gives you some upgrade potential.
And then the other part of that is, no, you don't need to buy extra cables. Actually, most of the manufacturers will provide more cables than you need to build a PC. Your case will come with certain cables. Most of those will be to connect any necessary fans or cooling. Your motherboard is going to come with the necessary cabling to connect your hard disk drives. Your graphics card will come with all of its proprietary and necessary cables to connect it appropriately. And usually your power supply will come with more cables than you could ever need to build 3 or 4 computers.
Yes. The only time you might need additional cables is if you need a specific adapter, sometimes power adapters, depending on what drives you're installing. But that's usually that's the type of situation where like it's more rare. Usually you'll have more than you need, so don't worry about it, I would say. But there are situations where you get everything, put it all together, and then you're like, crap, I need this one adapter to really plug this in. But it's usually, then you just order it, and it's usually cheap. Right? Okay. Yeah.
All right, our next question comes to us from Twitter. Geo at GDEGU002 asks, are the sleeved power cables interchangeable, like EVGA sleeved cables on a Corsair power supply?
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
Kyle, quit trolling.
Absolutely, definitely not. And in fact, whereas with most computer parts, this is something where we can tell people, oh, like, don't worry about what you need to plug in inside a computer, because, you know, a SATA power plug is keyed. It's a specific shape. It's pretty evident this only plugs into that. However, with modular power supplies, they often use off-the-shelf parts like this little guy here. So this is the side that plugs into the power supply from it's a modular connector, but really this is actually probably a PCI Express graphics off-the-shelf component that they bought, and they're using it for their interface. However, the way that EVGA has their power supply wired up with a connector like this might not be the same way that Corsair does, for example, or any other modular power supply manufacturer out there. So usually this isn't an issue because most people don't have multiple modular power supplies lying around with the cables strewn about, but it is a reason why since we have lots of power supplies here, over in the power supply area, I have these packaged up and clearly labeled each one what power supply it goes to, because that is somewhere you could seriously damage your hardware, is by trying to swap a different cable from a different power supply manufacturer, and crossing those wires can cause damage, fire, melted hardware, that sort of thing.
Just like Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams.
So don't try to cheap out on that sort of thing. If you're missing a modular connector, contact the manufacturer. They will often just send you one, or often they'll have, like, you can buy a new pack of them or something like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
This one comes from Nemix at Nemix01.
Hello. Is
there a best place to start with building a custom water loop?
That's a good question.
The hardware store.
Definitely choices in where to buy water cooling parts. That's a big starting off point. So Newegg has been expanding our selection of water cooling componentry. So you might find more of those available. For a while, we were missing certain stuff like radiators and reservoirs, pumps and that sort of thing. But I know we have a really wide selection of fittings, so you can check some of that stuff out. Another place that I like to go to, although they're a competitor, I'm still going to say it, Frozen CPU. Great location for a huge variety of water cooling parts, specialized parts. Often those parts, they're so specialized and they don't move a lot of inventory. That's why Newegg likes parts that sell quickly. So that's why I think we don't stock quite as many of them. But I think this question is more like, where should I begin with that? And I would say right now there's a lot of really viable options for closed loop coolers like this one here, but that are actually upgradable to for water cooling. Okay. So you can get one of those that you can just install and start using, and then, you know, maybe especially if finances is a problem, you can give it a little bit of time until you can buy that next component that you need, you know, that GPU block for your video card or something like that. SwiftTech has a H220X that just recently came out, very expandable system right there. Cooler Master likewise has the Glacier 240L, also expandable. And I know there's some other ones out there, but they're not coming up to me off the top of my head. But that's a great option that wasn't really available if you go back a couple years, is getting that closed loop cooler, use it now, and then expandable, upgradable,
Right.
And you can add to the loop in the future.
Also, if you're really serious about getting into it, you can check out another YouTuber. His videos, or his channel is called Jay's 2 Cents. If you haven't heard of him, we had him on the Alt-Tab live show a couple weeks back. He's local to us here and a good friend. Anyway, he is a huge water cooling enthusiast, so you can check out his stuff, and he definitely goes through step by step how to, really become a DIY water cooler.
He's kind of mean though.
Don't troll him. I'm just saying.
Jay, we love you.
We love you, man. All right, our next question, I'm gonna throw to Kyle. It comes from Adil.
Adil Pickle? Sorry, it's a cool
how
name.
it's spelled.
I love pickles, by the way, so your name's awesome.
He does, it's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
He eats all the pickles in the middle of the night.
I do.
And leaves the lids to the jars on the counter.
Like a pickle raccoon thief. Sorry. Continue.
Anyway, can the EVGA GeForce GTX 750 SC handle BF4 on high or ultra? And what are the ways you can apply thermal paste?
Is that a GTX 750 I heard?
He said 750, not the TI. You recently
Right.
did some benchmarks with the TI.
Correct. I actually, is that why you're redirecting it to me? Because I actually did a video on this recently?
No, it's just because you haven't answered anything.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect timing then, Jenny. I actually did a video on my my personal tech channel. It's Awesome Sauce News, in case you guys are interested. But I did it on the Gigabyte GTX 750 Ti Black Edition, which is a cut above the 750. I think they use the same GPU, the GM107, but it actually did pretty well in Battlefield 4, but I had to crank it down to medium to actually make it playable. Cranking it up to ultra, the average FPS was around 35, 36, but I was seeing frequent dips into the low 20s, which kind of made it for a pretty choppy experience. But if you have a 750, I would say you're cool on medium, maybe even on low, maybe turn some of the eye candy off like aliasing and whatnot, and you should be good to go.
All right, now, what are the ways you can apply thermal paste?
To a CPU? Completely different question?
You know what?
This is a two-parter.
There's no context to this at all, so.
Well, when applying it to toast, there's so many different methods for doing this, and I almost feel like no one will ever agree on the absolute perfect way to do it. No matter what method you use in like a video and you post it on YouTube, for example, someone will always say, that's wrong. Mm-hmm. Like we've never once had 100% like approval ratio on how we apply thermal paste. But generally the way that we like to do it here is the pea or the grain of rice method, which is basically making the drop right in the middle and making it about the size of a pea, or in between the size of a grain of rice and a pea. And generally if you make it that small, this stuff spreads, right? So as soon as you apply that pressure, which is quite a bit from your CPU block onto the CPU, it just all spreads out. And there have been demos where people take a piece of plexiglass and see how the thermal paste actually spreads from a drop that size, and it's usually more than sufficient. So that's the method we like to use. Honestly, if you really care that much about it, do some testing, do some different methods of applying thermal paste, and check the CPU temps and find out yourself.
One thing I like to do is if I'm working with a closed loop water cooler, I know a couple manufacturers tend to pre-apply thermal paste to their block. I like to, first off, as soon as I unbox that, grab some cleaning solution and clean that off. And then I will apply my own thermal paste, my own amount, to my CPU. And the reason being isn't because I think that the manufacturer has done it wrong or that they're using an inferior product. Usually they will do a lot of research and development and make sure that the product that they're using is the best for their component. But what I don't like is that when you're installing a closed loop water cooler, a lot of the times, you have to kind of finagle it and finesse it into place and figure out exactly how it's going to go. And with the exposed thermal paste on the bottom of that block, it gets messy. When you're sliding it over your CPU, trying to figure out just the right angle to get it in at. Also, if you do a test fit with it, then you're going to be wasting that thermal paste. I also tend to accidentally stick my thumb in it, and then it will get on other things. It's just a mess. So that is my thermal paste application tip, is that if you are working with a closed loop block.
You should see my cats when Jenny's building a computer. They're just coated in thermal paste.
That's because my application method is spray and pray.
Yeah. So is my cats. Sometimes.
Ew.
Sorry.
They don't spray. I would have killed them by now.
Thank God they don't.
And the final question from Johninator.
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 Skynet is real.
How did you learn all that you do about computers? Cue cheesy background music. Ding, 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 indicating a sentimental moment.
Sentimental? oh gosh. I was just gonna say, all my computer knowledge, I guess, has just been developed over time by doing a lot of reading and a lot of research online. I did not do any formal schooling specifically for computers or for hardware. I've never done like A+ certification. From like teens onward, I read a lot of Maximum PC, which was my favorite magazine growing up to kind of stay up to date with the computer stuff. Now there's Maximum PC, there's their website, there's so many websites that are available for computer technology. It's just a matter of knowing what those are. I kind of have a list of them, and I'll check them every so often to try to keep up to date with hardware that's coming out or that sort of thing. That's the thing about PCs though, is like there's constantly new stuff coming out. There's constantly new technology. You know, we've had SATA for the longest time, and that's become pretty standard for how to connect the SATA drive, and now we're moving to M.2, and there might be some other variables in there that people need to take into consideration. So just constantly staying up to date, doing a lot of online research, reading as much as you can, and having a real, actual, I guess, passion to learn more, because you know you have to stay interested and you have to stay enthusiastic about it. I think would be that's where my PC know-how comes from, I guess.
And all of my PC know-how comes from Paul. I learned it all right here at Newegg TV. I didn't know a stick of RAM from a stick of gum when I got here, but Paul taught me everything.
Yay.
Well, and Kyle.
This is not a paid advertisement.
And Steve.
And everyone. Yeah, pretty much the same. Paul taught me everything I know.
All right, so just hang out with me, I guess. It's a short answer.
All right, that wraps up this special edition of Q&A. If you want to have your questions answered, you can shoot them over to q&a@gmail.com. I know I've been getting really bad lately about responding personally, but it's just because we've been so busy. I apologize. I'll try to get more time allocated to just answering your emails. But also, you can tweet to us at Q&A on Twitter, or you can tweet to any one of us or Steve if you'd like, and we'll have those Twitter handles in the description. Until next time, thanks for watching Newegg TV.